Pals, if you're new here or lurking, please subscribe if that's something you want to do. If you're not new here, welcome back. Today's video is the 6 fan arts challenge. Because this took me such a long time to do over the course of 3 different sessions of a few hours each, I started filming with the sketches already complete. We're also kicking things off with a mistake. I forgot to lightly erase the sketch before starting to paint, so I tried to dry up what I'd put down and then erase my sketching guidelines, but I just kind of ruined the paper and then I had to paint really carefully over and around the tears that I'd created. I proceeded to forget to lightly erase most of the other sketches as well, but after my first attempt I didn't try to fix any more of them. I had some trouble picking who I wanted to draw for this challenge because although I spend a lot of my time binging Netflix, I don't actually watch that many different shows or movies, and sometimes I don't finish a TV series but I rewatch the first few seasons over and over, and when I'm close to the end I stop watching because I don't want to finish it. I can't exactly explain the logic of that, but I've heard that anxious people are gluttons for rewatching and rereading things because it almost guarantees no surprises, which is apparently less stressful. I don't know, I'm not a scientist. That being said, I did just finish watching Avatar, both The Last Airbender and The Legend of Korra for the first time, and I really enjoyed them. I was kind of upset at how few episodes there were. As a binger, it really didn't take me very long to finish them at all, and now I miss the characters. So I'll probably end up watching it again soon. As for the painting process, I actually used a mixture of watercolour paints as well as watercolour pencils and even a couple of coloured fine liners. The pencils was sort of a cop-out, to be honest. Basically, I found them easier to do the finishing touches with than watercolour, and since I was working in much smaller dimensions than I usually do, it allowed me some precision and control over the outcome. Even though I'm pretty confident with watercolours at this point, I still do find them unpredictable at times. So I laid down some flat colours with my Montmartre watercolour palette, I think that's how you pronounce it. I layered where I wanted shading, especially on the skin and hair, and then did extra shading and line art with the Prismacolor watercolour pencils and some cheap calligraphy pens that turned out to be more like coloured fine liners. I jumped around a lot in the painting process rather than just finishing one character at a time because I had to wait for the paints to dry. I guess I should take some time to talk about the shows and the movies that all these characters are from. Harry Potter was pretty much my introduction to literature. Arguably not the best introduction when you consider J.K. Rowling's writing, but I don't want to get too contentious here. Despite whatever the series might represent in the current day and time, I've accepted that one of my faves is problematic, and I can't take back that my dad read Harry Potter to me every night when I was a kid, or that I reread every book at least 5 times, except The Deathly Hallows, which I read on release and then never again, and The Philosopher's Stone, which I've probably read 10 times at this point. Not because I like it more than the others, just because I have to read the series from start to finish every time, and I usually lose interest after The Prisoner of Azkaban since that's my favourite, and I love Sirius Black and Remus Lupin. Hedwig, though, is my favourite character. I drew Luna because I love her character design and I always really connected with her weirdness, and I thought that her relationship with her dad was super endearing. Second, I drew Aang, even though Katara is probably my favourite character from The Last Airbender because I just thought that he was the obvious choice and I wanted to draw his tattoo. I also thought it would kind of diversify the crew a little bit since I knew all of the other characters except one were going to be women. Aang is one of those characters who I couldn't help but love, and I think he was written incredibly well. The way he showed maturity, nuances, and at the same time remained immature through his intense desire to make friends with and ride animals was super relatable. I also really enjoyed all the character relationships. Zuko's redemption arc, and the slow burn of Aang and Katara's relationship. For a hot minute I thought she'd end up with Zuko, but I'm happy with how it ended. Also, at the time of filming this, I hadn't started watching The Legend of Korra yet, but I've since finished it, and at first I was kind of resentful of it, I guess. I think it was because I missed Aang, and Katara being present in only a few episodes wasn't quite enough to satisfy me, but I can see how including her and Zuko, as well as making a callback to his voice actor and Uncle Iroh with the young General Iroh, was heartwarming and even kind of nostalgic in a way. It made me want to research the timeline to understand why Aang had passed while people who I assumed were older than him, at least physically, I know he was in stasis for like 100 years, were still alive. One last thing about Avatar is like, lots of people seem to think that The Legend of Korra is better than The Last Airbender, but I'm curious what you guys think, because personally I couldn't pick between them. I loved the 1920s vibe of Korra, but I think I preferred the characters in The Last Airbender. Bones is another comfort show for me. I've watched it over and over, even though I failed to ever finish it, because every time a new season comes out, I feel like I have to rewatch it from the beginning. A lot of that is because I have a really bad memory, and while I can remember the main story arc, I struggle with the subplots and relationships between characters. Especially in this show where there's a lot of back and forth of relationships, breakups and reunitings. Bones is that show that I watch when I'm upset or anxious, and it always makes me feel better despite the often morbid content. I adore Emily Deschanel, but my attempt at depicting her doesn't even come halfway to how gorgeous she actually is, which I'm a bit bummed about, but we move on. Hannibal. I never watched the older Hannibal movies or read the original book, but when I saw this TV show, I was pretty much sucked in from the go. I love the interpretation of Hannibal, I love Mads Mikkelsen, and Hugh Dancy is just like the perfect mix of hot and cute. Will and Hannibal's relationship is intense and interesting, filled with innuendo and the subject of heaps of speculation, but my favourite part of the show is when Will uses his ability to sort of go back in time and watch a crime scene clean itself up and then play itself out while he sort of sees through the eyes of the perpetrator. The cinematography and plot arc in Hannibal are to die for, and the prose that Will speaks in is really intriguing to me. I've never managed to watch all the way to the end, but I've made it halfway through the last season 3 times now. Of all the Studio Ghibli movies, I could never pick a favourite. Even after they all came out on Netflix and I rewatched a lot of them, I couldn't decide. Spirited Away is the obvious but kind of cliche choice, I think. Did anyone else have to watch it in school? We watched it in Year 9 media study, I think. And obviously I loved My Neighbor Totoro as well, but Kiki and her cat just sort of struck a chord in me as a person who has always loved the idea of witches and magic and all things fantasy. I love the idea of a witch having such a mundane job as being a delivery girl, and I would die of happiness if I could talk to my cats. Princess Mononoke is an honourable mention, and it's on my list to rewatch because even though I've seen it before, I've forgotten most of the movie because, like I've said, my memory is awful. Oh, and Howl's Moving Castle. I love that one too. Finally, Pokemon, which is probably even more nostalgic for me than Harry Potter. I watched all the episodes, the movies, played all the games, still do. The only set I missed was Sun and Moon. The only one I ever actually finished was Sapphire, but still, I played all of them to some extent. My brother and I even had all the books and Pokemon Snap, as well as other spin-off franchise games on the Nintendo 64. When I was a kid, I found Misty super annoying and girly. Mostly because I was a tomboy and she seemed to find everything that wasn't soft and pink squeamish. But as I got older and watched the series over and over again, I started to appreciate her strength as a trainer, and I think I related to her being the only girl in a group of guys, since I often got along better with boys when I was a kid. Misty tends to do well with presenting the character of a woman who can be in touch with her femininity while also being capable, even if she is a bit whiny at times, and I appreciate that much more as an adult. Towards the end here, I had to cut out some footage because I'm not really the best at making sure everything's in frame yet, and also because I was gripping my pencils really close to the lead, which made it really hard to see the lines I was working on, and for that reason, pretty boring to watch. I also ended up working on the finishing touches for Will Graham and Kiki almost entirely out of frame, so I cut pretty much all of that too. Sorry. Once I had finished colouring and lining, I used a 0.8 Copic multi-liner and ruled in each of their boxes, then inked their names. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to leave a like and let me know which is your favourite TV show in the comments. Bye pals!